Okay, it is noon Eastern. We have a lot to cover today, so we're going to just jump right on into it. My name is David Dodge. I'm the executive editor of Gays with Kids. Thank you so much for joining us on our webinar, either via Zoom or on Facebook Live. So today we are going to be covering everything that you need to know about the home study, which is often the part of the adoption process that freaks people out the most. But as you'll learn, hopefully by the end of this, it's not something to fear. It's actually something that can be very helpful. Most adoptive parents that go through this process find it incredibly useful and enriching, and it's honestly something that probably every parent should go through. But so just before we jump in and I turn it over to our experts, I just want to give, in case this is your first interaction with Gays with Kids, I like to give a little bit of a spiel at the beginning here, just so you know who we are and why we're doing what we're doing. So Gays with Kids got started about, over 7 years ago now. We started mostly as a way to try to inspire gay, bi, and trans men to fatherhood if it's something that they wanted for themselves. And so, we started just by profiling the many gay men out there who have become fathers over the years to show that, even though that the paths that are available to us to become fathers, namely adoption, foster care, surrogacy, like parenting partnerships, these are all complicated processes that that come with barriers that, let's face it, our straight brothers and sisters just don't have to overcome. But we wanted to show that it was possible. So we would profile literally just any gay man that you can find that is also a father, has an interesting story to tell, because again, these are not easy processes, and which you already know, or you wouldn't be here on a webinar learning about fatherhood. But so over the years, we started profiling tons of these families. We started profiling them on our Instagram page, which really blew up. If you're not following us there, please do. Lots of great, adorable photos of gay men and their kids. We started to hear from our followers that we were doing a really good job inspiring people to the point where they then wanted help to actually become fathers. They wanted to learn how to navigate these very complicated processes. And the truth was, at the time, we just didn't have the expertise and the partnerships across the country to help guide you through these, again, very complicated processes. So we spent a good year and a half scouring the country for professionals that not only know how to navigate surrogacy, adoption, foster care, but they're also very committed to the LGBTQ community in doing so. So you'll learn throughout this webinar and many of our other ones that there are no shortage of options that you have in these fields. There's no shortage of adoption agencies, and particularly within the realm of foster care and adoption, it really does matter who your experts are. There are experts out there that are adoption agencies that are allowed to legally discriminate based on no other reason than your sexual orientation. So it is important to find professionals that are not only going to be experts in this field, but also excited and committed to trying to make you a parent as a queer person. So we have launched webinars on all sorts of different processes. We have a 10-part series, both on surrogacy and adoption and foster care. We've been rolling these out again over the last year, along with tons of resources on our site. You'll hear me talk about this several times throughout as well, but go to gayswithkids.com, go to our Learning Center for Adoption. You'll learn a lot more about both the home study, which we're going to cover today, and every other last aspect of the adoption process. So again, today is very specific to the home study, but we do have other webinars online that you can go see that are pre-recorded that cover everything from finding an adoption professional to matching with the birth parent. Basically every step of the process is covered at some point in one of these webinars. So you're jumping into this one for the home study. And again, this is an incredibly important part of the process. So we're excited to get going with this, but please do go check out our website, gayswithkids.com. For other resources after this. You'll also hear me talk about, so if we're not able to get to every question that you have, so we'll be doing about 30 minutes of a presentation now. And by the end of that, we will be amassing all the questions that you have, which you will no doubt have many, and then we'll get through as many of those questions as we can in 15 minutes or so. If we can't answer your question as comprehensively, if we can't get to it, email us at dads@gayswithkids.com. I'll repeat that email several times throughout this presentation as well, but just to say it at the outset here. So again, so today we're going to be talking about the home study. We're going to talk about why you need a home study. It's something that every adoptive parent needs to go through no matter your route. And then we're going to give you some tips for how to prepare for your home study and hopefully leave you feeling more secure in this part of the process than you are before this webinar. So again, you heard me talk about some of the experts that we were looking around the country for. We're very excited to introduce you to two of these top experts in the country. We're going to be hearing today from Molly Ramp Thomas, who's the founder of Choice Network, and Olivia Pope, who's the Community Outreach and Development Manager at Friends in Adoption. We're in very good hands with both of these professionals today. And I'm going to turn it over to them right now. So Molly's going to first just walk us through kind of an overview of the level set around adoption. Then we're going to get into some of the nitty gritty around the home study. So Molly, take it over.
Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. I'm so excited to be here. Okay, so yeah, we might as well just go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to talk about is the different paths to adoption. So we sort of say there are 4 ways to adopt. The first is domestic infant adoption with the use of an agency. And that's really when an agency sort of is there with you from beginning to end. They're the people who will be doing your home study, who will be with you as you wait, who will be finding your match, doing the placement, sort of doing all of your services. You can either be using one agency or maybe you have a team of agencies that are working on your case depending on the situation. The second way to adopt is an independent adoption, domestic infant and independent adoption. And this is for families who use an attorney. And so usually many times an independent adoption is done when there is already a birth mother that you have identified. The third way is foster care adoption, and foster care adoption is usually, I believe it's, when you come to foster care, you are open to really being there as a parent, whether it means for 18 days or 18 years, supporting a child. There are then children who are legally available for adoption. So nationwide, there's 400,000 kids in the system and 100,000 of them are legally available for adoption. So you can adopt through the foster care system. It's a very different adoption. You're looking at older children when you consider that. So that's really the difference between domestic infant and foster care adoption. There's many differences, but that's one of the main ones. And then the fourth way is international adoption. International adoption is something that I'm least familiar with. I know that it's gotten more and more complicated. I think there's only 3 countries right now that are adopting to LGBTQ families. David, is that correct?
There's 2 that we know of that have programs that are specific to LGBTQ people, and that's Colombia and South Africa. But we can get into the specifics there. But yes, it's not a great option for LGBTQ people, unfortunately.
Yeah. So 4 options. The first 2 are really, infants. The second is foster care. The third then is just infants internationally. So the process to become a dad through adoption, the first is, and probably one of the most important, is finding an LGBTQ competent agency. As David said, I actually just heard a stat that LGBTQ families are 7 times more likely to choose adoption than straight couples. And so, that is incredible, but also only 1 in 4 adoption agencies serve LGBTQ families. And so a really great place to start when you're looking for an LGBTQ competent agency is HRC, and also Gays with Kids. Gays with Kids has a smaller list of agencies, but they're considered experts really in the field. And we have really, Olivia and I both come from those agencies. And I think that Gays with Kids highlights us because we've really not only shown that we're affirming, but we're also doing everything in our power to help families too. So just kind of taking that extra step. But HRC is always a great place to start. Gays with Kids is a great place to start when you're looking for LGBTQ competent agencies. Then after that, you would begin the home study process with that agency. No matter what, if you choose domestic adoption, international adoption, foster care, you will have to have a home study. And we're going to be talking about what the home study looks like, but that would be step 2. The home study is really in step 3 talks about an honest assessment of what your needs are too. So part of, after you have the home study, part of it is really then taking that time as you wait to build your village of people who are going to be there to surround you and support you, to get the things that you really do need, to find those pediatricians, find the, childcare you will be considering, get your tribe ready. So yeah, that's what would be step number 3. Step number 4 is when you're actually matched with a birth mother. And again, when you're choosing an agency to partner with, it's really their job to help you to find that birth mother. Step 5 is to prepare your home. And also, I think in step 5 is the time that you really love on that person who's chosen you. You begin to build the open adoption with them. Prepare your home, prepare your heart to be welcoming not only this child, but also the person who is bringing them to life and who has chosen you. Sort of into your world. And then step number 6 is bringing the baby home. So there's a lot of things that happen in between there, from the match to, preparing for placement to delivery, then placement happens, and then usually the child comes home with you. So these are really, the steps are more simple than they really are, but again, I think the most important thing is finding, that step 1, finding the people you trust to lead you on the way. So what is the actual home study? The home study is actually, it consists of a series of documents that you would complete. Those documents include like background checks, physicals, safety audits of your home, fire inspections of your home in some states. It includes reference letters. It includes kind of a deep dive in your financials. It includes a checklist of things that you would be open to in children. It's called, in Ohio, it's a child characteristics checklist. It's different in other states, but sort of just really reviewing what it is you believe you would be comfortable accepting. So it's a series of documents. It's training that you would complete. Every state, again, is different in the way that the training looks, but I would say in general, it's the training will be anywhere from 15 to 30 hours of training that you would receive. And then it's interviews with the adoption assessors. So again, it's documents that you complete, trainings that you complete, and time with an adoption assessor. That is sort of what makes up the home study. It's also like the slide says, it's the process to approve you as an adoptive dad. In every state, you have to have a home study that says that you're eligible to adopt in that state. It assesses your strengths and challenges and provides needed education and training. It prepares you for questions and realities. And again, all adoptive parents must complete a home study regardless of your path. And then again, it was Gays with Kids that I started to realize that people thought that the home study is just a review of your home. That's like probably one of the smallest pieces of it. But again, it includes this really valuable education and training. And like I talked about the background checks and physical, mental, and financial assessments that it does, and that like document piece, education piece, and then again, the assessor piece.
Great, thank you so much. So, so now we're going to get into some more of the nitty gritty of what the home study actually entails. Olivia's going to walk us through that. But again, if you have any questions about anything you're hearing so far, and again, it doesn't have to relate just to the home study process. We can field your questions around anything around adoption today. Use the Q&A function of your Zoom if you're joining us there, or you can comment on the Facebook Live feed. And I'm going to start gathering these, and we'll get into, again, as many as we can towards the end of the webinar. And now I'll turn it over to Olivia.
Hi, thanks. My name is Olivia, as mentioned. So I think one of the hardest things, obviously, in adoption is the waiting period. And so this is a good slide because it talks about kind of being an active participant in your home study. And, it depends how you choose to adopt, as Molly mentioned before. But, you can either be a really front seat driver, or if you're with an agency, they do a lot of work. But even if you are with an agency, some things that you can do either to prepare for your home study or after your home study while you're waiting and in the process. is to really educate yourself, whether that's reading books, talking to friends who have adopted. You will have a team to support you if you go through an agency. So talking to your social worker, and being active in asking questions and, doing things like this, coming to webinars, listening to people talk about home studies, and just kind of knowing what a home study is before you go into it. And also feeling open to really talk to your social worker or whoever is going to assess your home study with you. Other things to do are, to take parenting classes. No one knows how to automatically be a parent, regardless of how you have a child, right? So parenting classes, to look through affirming childcare welfare agencies. I think that also means, like all around, right? So healthcare, childcare, looking through all of places that you can also trust that are LGBTQ friendly, and also doing active work with, if you do have a partner, if you're adopting with someone, really having those conversations with your partner and about your relationship, how you want to parent, how you imagine raising a child, things like that, which is what your social worker will work with you on anyways during a home study. But those are just things that self-work you can do during the home study process. So what might disqualify you during a home study, which is, I think, a lot of people's, worries, but I also like to talk about what won't disqualify you. So first I'll go down this list, which is, obviously if you have some pretty serious criminal history or history of abuse or violence, you will go through a background check. We don't mean, the misdemeanors you might have picked up when you were 17 years old. We mean serious offenses and felonies that would disqualify you from adopting. We say that everything will come out eventually. So you should be honest and upfront and have those conversations with your social worker. If you have some really untreated or severe mental or physical illness that are going to prevent you from creating a stable home for a child. If there's active or untreated use of illegal drugs, obviously, and sometimes you may be given additional resources or given additional advice about parenting. Sometimes, you have to go through additional sort of like cultural competency training, things like that. I like to say that what doesn't disqualify you is usually your age. We have a lot of older people adopting, not owning a home. You can rent as long as whoever is living with you is also going through the home study process. Not being married and being single. That used to be a big reason why people were not allowed to adopt, but now many single people adopt, and you can have a partner and not be married, and that's also fine. So it will never be a secret or a surprise what will disqualify you. That's a benefit of going through an agency, is that they will really give you this information up front, and you will be aware of all the sort of ups and downs of what might interfere. So that's that slide. So Molly talked a little bit about this, about finding a LGBTQ affirming agency. I think the number one is going to the HRC, the Human Rights Campaign website, and going to the All Children, All Families database and looking. They will list like agencies by state. And then you can sort of just browse, and the agencies that are on those websites have to go through numerous steps to be on those websites. So you know that they're 100% verified, basically, that they're LGBTQ plus affirming. I would also say that if an agency is LGBTQ friendly, they're not going to hide it. You're going to be able to find information on their website that's up in front that says, hi, we adopt to everyone. I think it should be obvious that they are affirming, whether it's their literature or their website. The other thing is to ask recommendations from friends. Many people are in LGBTQ communities with other friends, and you can ask those people. I also like to say to visit your local Pride or LGBTQ center. They often have literature. In my job, I drop literature off all the time at those places, so you can also go there. Join online communities like Gays with Kids, the Facebook page, the website, and they have both Molly and I on their website, along with several other agencies. And they're a really great resource. They have a huge community, and I would recommend that's a really great first stop as well.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. Okay, so I'm going to take us off of this screen share so we can see each other and have a conversation. So again, any questions that you have, please submit them via the Q&A function on Zoom or on the Facebook Live stream if you have them there. So the first question we have from Facebook is just about the specific costs about all this. So I know that this will be a little bit different depending on if you're doing an independent adoption or working with an agency. But how much does it cost? I mean, within an agency, actually, why don't we broaden this out a little bit to talk about the cost of domestic infant adoption specifically, and then what part of your agency fee goes to cover the home study, if you want to take that, Molly.
Yes, so I think that I can't remember what Gays with Kids normally says about the total cost, but I believe that the national stat is 42,000 is the average for families, and I would say that my families are around that. Usually, when I talk with families, it's anywhere from $30,000 to $45,000. Every agency has their fees look different, so. Because I am an infant placing agency, my total fee is $25,000. And so, and families pay that in installments. So for the first installment is $5,000, and that's sort of the application and home study. The second is 10, and that's for to go live on our site. And then the final payment is 10, and that is paid at time of placement. So, but every agency does it different. When families come to us just for a home study, the fee, we can only serve Ohio families for that. So that's also, a different, I can't serve all families, but I can work with families all over. But I'm licensed to do home studies in Ohio. Those fees are usually around $2,500 to $5,000 also.
Great. Anything you'd add to that, Olivia, in terms of the price of the home study?
No, I don't know the individual price for the home study, but we're about the same as Molly mentioned, that it's like upfront around 20 something, and that's in installments. And then they take out an escrow for when they get matched. So it's pretty similar. And I think that's a good national average. As Molly mentioned, that seems to be kind of between 38 and 48 or something like that. So I would agree that's about where they're at.
Great. Okay, so you both mentioned that the training hours that are required of a home study vary, and the range, I think you said between 15 and 20 hours. So someone's curious to know what kind of plays into that range, what for one person might be 15 hours versus 20. Is it just state to state differences, or what impacts that range? And Olivia, why don't we keep it with you?
I'm so sorry. The first half of your question broke up.
Oh,
I just
no
heard the word training. Can you repeat that?
Sure. No, the question is just what impacts the range of training hours that might be prescribed someone for a home study. So we said in the presentation it's typically between 15 and 20 hours. But so what would impact that range for someone?
Yeah, I'm everybody is so individual, but I would say if people need additional additional, not classes, but additional time to, I think it just depends per person. And I have to be honest that I have the privilege of working on the professional side with social workers and hospitals, and I'm not on the home study side. So I don't have specific information, but I do know that people might go through additional just sort of training for, depending on what they stated that they were what child they were able to care for, whether it's special needs or race or things like that. They might go through additional competency training through a home study, and additional questions that a social worker might work with them through. So I would say it really just depends on what you said that who you would be willing to parent and what challenges would come with that. would be my advice. Molly might have better insight on that, working closer with adoptive families.
Yeah, no, I think actually I really like what you said, Olivia. And I think I actually said 15 to 30, but I mean, it probably, I don't know, it's hard. A foster care is way more usually. I think foster care is 30 to 45 hours and infant adoption is less. International adoption, I'm not really exactly sure, but I think that she's totally right. If you're open to special needs, or maybe sometimes with us, it's like you're coming in, you're brand new, and openness is something brand new to you. So we're going to be spending more time talking about openness. So that is like maybe an example as well. Sometimes couples aren't on the same page. So we're spending more time like really training and making sure we're getting everybody on the same page. But the stuff that's required per state is like, special needs, openness, but also it would be things like, oh God, I am literally drawing a blank. Oh my gosh. Well, I don't want to waste our time.
No worries. I know. I think that answers the question.
Child development is one. Understanding the processes of the foster care or the child welfare system is another one. So sorry, but yeah, mostly I would say it's on transracial adoption, special needs, and openness is where the majority of the time is spent. Sorry.
Yeah, no apologies needed.
Great question. And also I was just going to add to that, it's really smart this is a good question to ask the agency that you work with, is like, what can we expect for the training?
Right. No, absolutely. But I do think that you're right that what probably the biggest impact, the range of training that you're going to need is the route that you take. So if you're going to go foster care versus domestic infant. What I know about international adoption, so I will say we have a question about this too. So we do work with the Spence Chapin Adoption Agency, which is based in New York and New Jersey, and does domestic infant adoption there, but also does international adoption both in Colombia and South Africa, which again are the two programs that we work with and know well, that are very affirming and welcoming of LGBTQ applicants. And so from the US side, the adoption process and the home study process is fairly similar to what it would be otherwise, but you also, the big difference there is you also have to meet the requirements of the adoptive country. And then there are certain requirements, such as they'll approve you based on your age to adopt a certain age, for instance. So these things that don't come into play here locally in the US might come into play abroad. And if you're trying to adopt in countries that in other countries, there can be requirements like you can't be single, so it gets a little bit more complicated depending on where you're adopting abroad. But so I will say, if you're specifically interested in international adoption, definitely go to our website, and we have a link to chat with all of our professionals, including the two that we have here today, to talk a little bit more in detail about this. But Spence Chapin will be happy to follow up with you and talk more about all of that. Okay, so we have several questions about finances and resources. So I think we can definitely spend some good quality time here. But so the first question is around what kind of financial capacity people are looking for in an agency. So this is a great question. It's like, are you going to be denied at a certain income level? And so what kind of resources are they expecting to see during the home study process? Olivia, do you want to take that first?
Yeah, I would say, I don't have like a specific spreadsheet with the level of finances, but I would say that, during your, before you go active during this process, you do go over, just like you have a background check, you also have a financial background check as well. And, the goal of that is to make sure that, it is not going to bankrupt you, and that you will be able to continue to provide a stable home for a child. I would say that when you are looking into agencies, those are the questions that when you meet one-on-one with a case manager or whatever, the agency might call that person, that those are the specific questions that you bring up. And you're just upfront about your finances. And I would say that there are, a few resources. I think the website that we always give people is, I believe it's helpusadopt.org. And also, I think you can talk to your employer as well. They occasionally offer a stipend for adoption if you're planning to adopt. But when it comes to being worried about if you're going to pass or fail because of income level, those are the questions that come up sort of immediately before you're going to get deep into the process.
Right.
A lot of agencies, I think, offer also, introduction to the agency, and you can sort of get those more logistical questions when you do like the agency 101 with them.
Anything you'd add about what people are looking for in financial capacity, Molly?
I would just say, I think it's probably pretty rare that an agency would turn someone down due to their finances. I mean, as long as you have stable income, like income is coming into the home and, you're able to have a stable life, then I think that's probably most what is being looked at. There isn't like a dollar amount, I would say.
So, right. So it does seem like it's case by case basis. So I know, for instance, a couple who adopted, they're based in the DC area. And so they were, looking into domestic infant adoption. They were excited about the process. They make decent money. But when they really started getting into the finances, one of the partners had student loans that were, they put their debt to income ratio at a certain place that, kind of complicated the situation for them. They also had some credit card debt. They had, some things that that the agency didn't deny working with them, but what they did was assign them an advisor, basically, that was included in the cost of working with the agency, that then worked with them on a financial plan to make sure that they could pay down some of this debt before they could pass their home study. So I think in some extreme cases like that, but I think the overall point is it's case by case to talk to the agency, and they'll walk you through this to help you really. I mean, does that sound about right to both of you?
Yeah, and just I would say don't not do it because you feel
exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's great also that you just said that they, like, your agency will give you resources, and it's not like if you are turned away, it's not like you're being turned away to never come back. It's to give you the resources to be able to adopt.
Right. I mean, agencies want to work with you. They want to help you start your family. So they're not there to be gatekeepers at all. So that's, an important point. We touched on this a little bit, but let's dig into this. We have another question about how to keep costs down in both the home study process and just the adoption process more generally. So I'll start by saying we have a whole webinar dedicated to affording adoption, because like Molly said, the average price is around $42,000, which is not cheap. And people are often surprised to learn how expensive it is. And your costs really can balloon up from that depending on a certain number of factors. It can be less expensive in certain places. What are some of we mentioned helpusadopt.com, which is an amazing organization that provides grants to help people complete the adoption process. They work specifically with LGBTQ people. They're looking for more queer men in particular to reach out to them. So if you're interested in or in need of a little bit of financial help, definitely reach out to them. The founder there, Becky Fawcett, literally is asking us I think they do 3 different grant cycles a year. Every time she's asking us to send people their way. So please do reach out to them. But what are some other ways that people can keep costs down? Keeping in mind that we don't have to spend the next 30 minutes talking about this, but just a couple of other places that people can think about. Molly, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think it's a really great question, but I just don't know if keeping the cost down is the right, it's hard, for example, once a family signs on with me, there's not, if a birth mother has needs, we're going to be giving her living expenses. There's going to be attorney situations that happen that were, what the attorney's fees are is what their fees are. So there's just not a lot of ways to keep the cost down. But I think what is more important is that you choose an agency and you fully understand their fees and what you will be expected to pay. So just really continuing to question them till you feel 100% I understand what it is I'm going to be expected to pay and how that's going to look. Then I think secondly is to research the resources available, like Help Us Adopt. There's also the federal and many states have tax credits available to families as well. So, sorry, someone's at my door. So, just understanding what is available to you, I think was the second thing that I was going to say too. So there are a lot of resources through the tax credit and also through grants. And also just reaching out to communities and asking, how did you afford this? How did you fundraise for it or get the dollars? And sometimes people have really cool ideas that you may not have thought of. And then also that I do think that the webinar is really good on Gays with Kids and to check that out.
Anything you'd add, Olivia, to that?
No, I thought that was really, really well said. I agree that it's just, it takes a lot of resources for a successful adoption. And that just unfortunately means finances. So, but I think what Molly said was great. And I have nothing else to add.
And we should clarify, we're talking specifically right now about a domestic infant adoption. So if you were wanting to adopt a newborn, this is the cost average for that process. It's a little bit, the range can be a little bit more actually for international adoption, depending on where you're going. But for foster care, if you're interested and open to adopting a child through the foster care system, it's free and comes with, you'll be reimbursed for the cost of the home study, for instance. You won't be required to pay for it. And you also get resources from the state up until your child turns 18 to 21 years old. So yeah, this was specific to this process. And I should also, I think, Olivia, you mentioned this, that something that we're encouraging and trying to push more for adoptive dads is to really go talk to your place of employment, talk to your HR department. We have profiled some fathers who have done this exactly and found out that they did not have any sort of help through their employer to offset some of the cost of adoption, but they work with them in order to provide them. Oftentimes you might be the first adoptive parent to ever bring it up to them, and it's not something that they're closed off to. They just haven't had to think through this before. So this is true across every way that LGBTQ people become parents. So we're always encouraging people to educate your human resources department on these processes and how expensive they are. They often provide benefits for your heterosexual colleagues in different ways. So it's a good opportunity to try to educate more employers out there on the need for this to be less expensive for people. Okay, so we have another question about resources for parenting courses. So I think so some of these you're going to be provided just within the home study, but I guess if someone's kind of looking at this before starting the home study, let's interpret it this way and let me know if that's not the way that you're thinking about this, Andy. But what can people be doing now to learn more about some of these parenting courses, or maybe to supplement the other parenting courses that they would get through the home study? Let's go with you, Molly.
I will maybe pass this to Olivia if you have ideas, Olivia. I don't. I think
no, it's okay. Sometimes I get stumped, and I'm glad you're talking because I'm like, I don't know.
I would say find your village. Like, to us, usually people's best parenting support and where they're learning from is actually people they know and they admire in their parenting. And then there are great books. I don't have them like off the top of my mind right now, but there's really awesome books out there about parenting too. But I'm going to pass to Olivia.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I for my job visit places all the time to pass out literature. I would say, and you might not have these where you live, but really do visit your local Pride Center. They have a lot of parenting groups, programs, and even if it doesn't pertain to you, you can ask them for the resources about parenting, or where you can pick up parenting classes, or so I would really just recommend any kind of like Pride or LGBTQ center. I would also say a lot of agency websites have like a resource tab where you can go and it says like recommended books and, things like that you can go through. Sometimes if you are, if your doctor has like a pediatrician, they might have recommendations. Even if you don't have a pediatrician yet, whoever your family doctor is, you can ask, hey, I'm thinking about adopting, or I'm going to be adopting, and, I need XYZ resources. And also friends, as Molly mentioned, your community, people who have adopted, and even if they're not the LGBTQ community, they're a heterosexual couple, they still might have information about where you can go. So I would recommend those couple of things to reach out to and see, as well as just good old Google.
Right. So, I mean, it seems like it's a great impulse to be wondering about this at this point. I'm not quite sure where you are in the process, Andy, but it's great to be thinking about this. But it also seems like when you start the home study, that is the whole purpose of this, is to figure out what kind of resources you need to be able to round out your parenting experience, to make sure that yours is prepared as possible. It does seem like one place that people could be preparing, and this is an area I know you both can speak at length about, but at this stage of the process, is to be researching open adoption and what that means, what relationships are like with birth families. This is, I'm actually just going to pass this straight to you, Molly, if you can talk a little bit about why open adoption is now such a big presence in the adoption community, and like the idea of a closed, I think a lot of people come to this assuming that that they might pursue a close adoption, or that's still like the prevalent model, and it's very much not anymore. So could you just talk through a little bit about why that's the case, and then any resources that you would give someone that's at the outset of this process about open adoption?
Yeah, I think that, I think the national stat is like around 90% of women choose open adoption. With us, it is almost 100%. Even if a pregnant person is saying that they want closed, they always open up. They always open up in some way. And so also I give this stat that there's 36 waiting couples for every one baby available for adoption. And so only 1% of pregnant people are choosing adoption as an option. So that person is special. And that relationship, what we know is that closed adoption was harmful to women, children, families, and communities. And so the best adoption agencies are doing everything in their power to change that. And the best way is that connection to your birth family. And so I think there's incredible podcasts out there and really great stuff. Again, I think that, like Olivia said, like my agency has resources. We share them all of the time. I can't think of them like off the top of my mind, ones that I would say right away. I wish I had my team here with me, but there's just really great people that I think all of us send families to. But then also it is, again, just getting a part of this community, starting to have conversations. You're asking all of the right things. Open adoption, transracial adoption, and its impact. Those are probably two of the biggest things to be really spending your time getting to know.
Absolutely. Anything you'd add, Olivia, on either of those, or resources for open adoption and transracial adoption?
No, I think that's good. I agree that open adoption is really the way adoption is going and should be going. You know what I mean? It should always be the birth parent should always really have that choice. And I agree that most birth parents choose open adoption. So I really think educating yourself about open adoption and learning also how to sort of navigate and be okay with it is really important, because that's the way of adoption. And it's really great too. I mean, it's just so wonderful to see birth parents and adoptive parents interacting. So no, I think Molly said it really well. And it's great that we have two agencies that are really advocating for open adoption as well. So
absolutely. Well, and we should just say this is also not just the three of us sitting here advocating for open adoption. This is very much based in the research. It's proven to be a benefit to everyone involved, most importantly, the child, but also the adoptive family and the birth family. So yeah, I think this is something you could definitely be looking into at the outset, depending on where you are in the process. And yes, these suggestions are great. We actually also have a webinar about open adoption, so you can look for that at gateswithkids.com, where we go into much more depth about all of this good stuff. So we have a great specific question here that I do not know the answer to. Andy is asking that, so he's in the process of renovating his home with his husband, and he's wondering how far along it needs to be before it could pass a home study. That's a great question. I'm not sure. What do you know, Molly?
Yes, I would say you have to, your home has to have has to be safe for a child. So some of the things that we look for is the outdoor area is safe, like what's surrounding the home, and then inside too, just making sure there's not like hazardous things, but also making sure that like prescriptions are and cleaning materials are in safe places, and if you have firearms, that they're locked up in a specific way, things like that. Also, you have to have in Ohio, and I think many states, you have to pass a fire inspection of the home. So you have to have like fire extinguishers and carbon monoxide detectors and all of that. But I would say that is, so you have to be able to pass a fire inspection and pass a home safety audit. But I would say that that's a good question to ask the agency that you choose, because for us, if you're renovating a bathroom, there would be no reason to not move forward, or sometimes people are doing a back deck or things like that, but like a major like kitchen renovation or things like that, it could make it hard for the approval. But I would say, again, just once, it's a great question to ask your agency, and they can say hold off until you get to this place, but yeah, no reason to not move forward.
Great. Anything you'd add to that, Olivia?
No, I think that's good. I was just thinking about the fact, to say like congratulations to anyone who goes through this process, because what Molly was just saying, you have to do a fire and safety inspection. Like imagine if every pregnant person giving birth had to have a fire and safety inspection in their home. They don't. This is something that only adoptive parents have to go through. So it's like adoptive parents rock. You have to go through all of this work, and really it's just I just thought about that as Molly was talking. I was like, wow, imagine if every person in the United States had to do that.
And the more you learn about the home study, the more I'm kind of like, maybe everyone should go through this. I think
maybe everyone should have to do this before they have a baby.
You will be far more prepared than the average parent. So there's that. Okay, so in the last couple of minutes we have here, so I'm actually going to put the links in where you can learn more about Choice Network and Friends in Adoption. And I want to give both of our experts here a chance to sign off quickly. And I'm just going to put out one other, kind of the closing. I think you've probably picked up from the conversation here today how important it is to be working with an LGBTQ affirming agency, not someone that, so there was big news this a couple months ago when Bethany Christian Services, which is the largest evangelical adoption agency in the country, is now working with LGBTQ families, which is fantastic. The more the merrier. We welcome them to the fold, but being a newcomer in this space is not the same as having years and years of expertise and advocacy on the part of LGBTQ adoptive families. And so again, while we welcome them to the fold, that really you have choices here, and it's important to research them. And your agency, if you're going the agency route, guide you through this process step by step. They are going to be your go-to for for answers to all these questions that you have. So it is important to do your research. Again, it does not have to be any of the agencies that are on our list, but Human Rights Campaign, again, has a much more extensive list that has gone through rigorous training in order to get on their list. So there are great places to go to check for agencies that are good to work for in your particular area. So both of our experts here have also very graciously offered to provide consults to Gays with Kids followers. So if you have more questions or you want to speak more individually with either of our experts here, they may or may not be able to work with you depending on where you are in the country, but they are happy to help direct you in the best place possible. So I'm going to put the links to their landing pages in the little chat function on Zoom. I'll put it in the Facebook Live chat as well. And that's enough out of me. So if both of you just want to sign off and maybe just leave people with like one last thought on the home study, why people shouldn't fear it and embrace it, why it's actually a good part of the process. Why don't we start with you, Olivia?
My last sign off word of advice is always, be yourself. It's a big thing, people, it's the home study is, I think, so scary from the outside, but we say, be yourself and be honest and show up as who you are, and it'll all be good. Because, in the end, and that goes the same for, for birth parents, for the whole adoption process, to be who you are. It's about, when and not if, and so that would be my advice, is just stay true to yourself and be genuine. And congratulations, as I just said, that, you have to go through so much more than a lot of people have to in order to parent. And if you do decide to adopt, congratulations, and Molly and I can have your back.
Great, thank you. And Molly.
I think it's just, I do hope that people are hearing David when he says like HRC and Gays with Kids is the best first place to start. Because even giving the example that he used, like, unless agencies are screaming it from the mountaintops, and, I always say, like, I refuse to do panels with agencies in regards to LGBTQ families unless they have the HRC seal, because my agency is small and we did it. And so I think any agency can, and it's just the one thing to really be able to show that you're affirming. So I would say that. And then I was also just going to say, just jump in. The cool part is that you're that assessor, that person who's doing your home study with you, they become your team, they become part of your journey, and you just kind of feel like now you have someone on your side. I love what Olivia said too. It's actually hard for me to top that, but to be yourself, and to know that there's great people out here who want this for you. And I love that she said it's not if, but when. That's the really great thing about adoption, is that it can take time, but it will happen. So cheers and congrats.
So, and I'll just sign off by, again, we mentioned several other resources that you can, if you're still doing some research into this, please go check out our other webinars. We also have a great video series, a 9-part curriculum that walks you through every step of the adoption process. Gays with Kids wants to be here as your primary resource as you're going through this very wonderful journey, but that can still be a difficult and challenging one, an emotional one at times. But so we are here for you. Please do join our online community. Sign up for future webinars. You can look for those at gayswithkids.com. And we look forward to seeing, so actually there was one comment in the Facebook feed that I had missed, wondering about the financial resource that we'd mentioned before. It is helpusadopt.org. I just put it in the chat, so definitely check them out. They have a rolling application process. You can jump on board at some point throughout the year. They're looking for gay families to help, so do reach out to them. Thank you again, both to Olivia and Molly, and for everyone for joining us, and we'll see you on a future webinar.